Hey guys, I've just restarted the video because there's a problem with my feed. I'm not getting any comments coming through. I don't know if I'm transmitting or not. I've had some problems with my Facebook stuff getting out recently. So please, if anyone's out there and they're watching and can hear what I'm saying, please just comment, yes, you can hear me. It's a very important topic I'm talking about today. So I'm just going to wait for a couple to jump on. I'm getting a lot of thumbs up and a lot of likes and stuff, but I'm not receiving any comments, so I don't know if anyone can hear me. Please just comment. Hope everyone had a good restful eclipse or got some really good information. I know I did. I'm looking forward to doing my video that I got the information early hours of this morning. Pulled me out of bed and I had to sit there and write about 3 pages of information to share with the alleged leaders of the world, but I'm going to do that at a later time. So is there anyone out there that can hear me? Just comment if you can hear what I'm saying. I'm just going to keep restarting the videos until someone comments. Saeed, sounds good, thank you. Alright, so I was up late last night, looking at information, reading, watching, and this one really stuck out to me. New laws will allow the use of military to break protests. Now, this article, when you actually read through it, is very, very concerning for the Australian people and the Australian soldiers as well. I like to believe that our Australian soldiers are wise enough and smart enough and able to have independent thinking than that any of them would ever stand up against their countrymen, against their Australian public, who they swore to protect and who they joined the Army or Air Force or Navy, whatever it is, they signed up to protect the Australian public, not to be used against them to protect property. So I'm going to talk about this article in depth. The following is by Paul Gregory and published by Sydney Criminal Lawyers, 19th of July 2018. It deals with new legislation introduced into Parliament which will make it easier to involve the military to control the Australian population. The Turnbull government recently introduced legislation into Parliament designed to lower the threshold for calling out the Australian Defence Force to assist state police forces with public incidents. The Defence Amendment, Call Out of the Australian Defence Force Bill 2018, revises Part IIIAA of the Defence Act 1903, which was inserted into the Act in the lead-up to the 2000 Sydney Olympics. Currently, the military can only be called upon by state and territory authorities when they've exhausted all other options. What that means is when they've exhausted all other options, that means that there is no police left, either on or off duty, that can be called to assist in any situation, domestic situation. So once all of the police resources have been used to deal with an instance, only then, if they cannot contain and control a situation, can the military be called. As it stands, this bill completely wants to override that and null and void that, and basically give the powers to one of the 3 or 4 ministers that are going to be appointed with the powers to call in the military as they see fit. This is very dangerous. We've already seen I put a picture up the other day of the Minister for Defence. We can see that she's never spent a day of her life in a battlefield. She doesn't know what it's like to see a dead body, to see inside someone else's head, or to see their brain laying on the ground next to them from war, from the impact of a bullet going through someone's brain and opening up the other side. War is disgusting, and we do not want it here in Australia. We do not want the Australian Defence Force operating in Australia on Australian soil. It is unconstitutional. It is against the law. Okay. The new legislation also allows the PM and other authorised ministers to send in the troops when state authorities haven't requested assistance. But Commonwealth interests are at stake. Bear in mind, Commonwealth, they are talking about the Commonwealth, the corporation. They're not talking about the Commonwealth of the Australian people. They're talking about the corporation, the Commonwealth. They're two separate things. I've been speaking about this for a while. We understand that, we know that. So they can be called in when the Commonwealth company interests are at stake. And it provides ADF members with enhanced search capabilities and limited shoot-to-kill powers. Who the fuck are they going to be shooting in Australia? A much broader scope. Australian Attorney General, before I keep going, this is really important for any politicians, anyone out there who has any position of power or who has any ability to affect any change in Parliament, must get onto this immediately, because the closing date is the 31st of this month for submissions for this to not go through. So we've got 3 days for anyone out there. Okay, a much broader scope. Australian Attorney General Christine Porter told journalists the Link Cafe siege, which, might I remind you, the Link Cafe siege saw the only victims in the Link Cafe siege were killed by the police. The New South Wales police force killed the only people in that siege. No terrorists, no alleged terrorists, no one else killed anyone except for the police. Do not forget that. That is very important. Australian Attorney General Christine Porter told journalists that the Link Cafe siege, along with the potential for a Paris terrorist attack style incident being carried out in Australia. And what do we see in Paris? I was there last year. There is military on the streets in Paris. They are under military rule. There's no doubt about it. There is military walking around with assault rifles in their city. It does not feel good, it does not feel nice, and you do not feel safe. Believe me, I've been there. We don't want that here. We don't need that here. So along with the potential for a Paris terrorist attack style incident being carried out in Australia, makes streamlining the process of calling out SAS or commando regiments necessary. Why do you want to send out the SAS or commandos on Australian soil? These people are trained to kill. That is what we as a commando, I know because I've been a commando. I know what we're trained to do, and we are trained to kill. That is it. I don't know what the SAS are trying to do because I haven't been there. If anything, the only Defence Force members that are allowed to operate within Australia is the Australian Reserve Force. That is why they are there. The Australian Reserves are there to protect the domestic, the civil liberties of Australian people. Regular army, they're not there to do that. That's not their job. Okay, however, the call-out powers don't just apply to terrorism. They target domestic violence. This is a broad term set out under Section 119 of the Australian Constitution, which provides that the federal government should protect states and territories against invasion and rebellion. What that means is, if the people of Australia decide that their government is not performing as prescribed and they decide to lawfully rebel, which is their right under the Magna Carta, lawful rebellion, Article 61, if the Australian people should decide to rebel against their government because their government is not doing their job, then the military can be called in under this new legislation. Indeed, Mr. Porter has stated that the ADF could be sent in to quell widespread rioting, while civil liberties advocates stress that these new powers have the potential to be used upon peaceful protests and industrial actions. Industrial actions and peaceful protests. Okay, we saw the video in America about a week or two ago where there was peaceful protests and they sent in the military, militarized police, and just moved them on. They just would not tolerate the people exercising their right to voice their opinion and their qualms. It is a dictatorship. There is no other word for it. There is no other definition. It can't be described as anything else. That is what it is. Okay, against strikes and demonstrations. Civil Liberties Australia CEO Bill Rawlings points out that the bill allows the government to call out the ADF to protect declared infrastructure. Given the current government's policies, troops are likely to be called out around coal-fired power stations and ports that export coal, he explained. Why? And why are they using the military to protect infrastructure? Unless they are not a legitimate government and they are in fact what I've been saying, a government in exile declaring war on the Australian people, already declared war on the Australian people, enacting war against the Australian people. Why do they want military protecting coal stations? What are they expecting? What are they thinking is going to happen? What are they worried about? The federal government can use the army to break environmental protests just like the government did in the 1940s to break coal strikes. Let me say that again. The federal government can use the army to break environmental protests. That means if a group of Australians are seeing the destruction of our nation, of our land, of our country, and they don't like it, so they decide to protest and speak up, the Australian government wants to call in the military to silence them and say, hey, shut up. Stop bringing attention to what we're doing. We don't want anyone to know. That's what they're doing. The legislation also provides that military personnel can use lethal force during certain civilian incidents. Proposed Section 51N3 outlines that this can be done in the protection of an individual's life, to take action against an aircraft or vessel, as well as in the protection of declared infrastructure. Okay, so what they're telling you, Australian people, is that declared infrastructure is now more valuable than the Australian people's lives. If the Australian people decide that their government is illegitimate and they decide to take back their resources, the legislation they want to put in place provides them the alleged authority, which it never will be, and they're always going to be held accountable regardless of in this realm or the next. Doesn't matter, but they're always going to be held accountable. So what they're saying is basically the life of the Australian public is not worth as much as the infrastructure or the public infrastructure, okay, or declared infrastructure, the corporation's infrastructure. So if the Australian public don't like something or some infrastructure that's destroying our country and decide to protest, or do something to that infrastructure, they can now be killed, shot dead, on sight. I have seen the inside of a man's head with his brain laying next to him. Let me tell you, it is not pretty. It is not good. And any Australian soldier who, I really like to believe that there are good in people, and especially Australians, that we are a smart, intelligent bunch and that we can see what's going on. But in the event that any Australian soldier should exercise a shoot to kill policy on any Australian person, that person that does that will be held accountable for the rest of this life and for many others to come, because that is the most treasonous act you can do. If you're an Australian soldier and you kill an Australian person, your soul will fry for a long, long time. Believe me. Or don't believe me. I don't care. It's up to you. You decide. It's your business. Military police. The Defence Call-Out Bill makes it sound like the military will only be supporting local police, yet troops under this law get powers to detain, search and question Australians. Mr. Rawlings made clear. These are powers that ought be exercised by police only. Agreed. And let me be, I just want to go back and read this one thing. The legislation provides that military personnel can use lethal force during certain civilian incidents. Proposed outlines this can be done in protection of individuals' life. That goes both ways, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a sovereign or an Australian and someone else's life or lives are in danger, you have the responsibility and authority by God to act in self-defense for those people that are being harmed. Not only do you have the right, but you've got the responsibility to do that. That's being a human being. Military police. The defence call-out bills make it sound like the military will only be supporting local police, yet troops under this law get powers to detain, search and question Australians. Mr Rawlings made clear these are powers ought to be exercised by police only. Under proposed paragraph 46(7)(d) of the bill, ADF members have the power to search persons, locations or things for things that may be seized, while proposed paragraph 46(7)(f) allows them to detain people found during a search. So they can search whatever they want and they can detain whoever they want. This is absolutely military rule. This is a dictatorship. And several proposed new powers for ADF personnel are set out under paragraphs 46(7)(g), h and I. These allow the military to provide security, question people and compel them to produce documents. Let me be clear. There is absolutely no law or statute in this country that requires any person to carry with them any documents at any time, ever. Whether you're driving a motor vehicle or not, whatever. Unless you're doing it for commercial reasons. But there are absolutely no laws or statutes that requires any person in this country to carry any documentation of any kind, especially identification. So how are they going to compel people to provide these documents that they don't even carry? Is that then going to be used as an excuse to detain that person and hold that person because they don't have the documents that they don't have to carry anyway? Is that then going to be used as a lawful or a alleged lawful excuse to detain these people? That's a question I'd want answered. These powers only apply to certain actions set out in subsection 46(6), which the new legislation has expanded to include the capture or recapture of a location, including a facility or thing. Alright, so if the Australian people decide to, again, take action against the government that is not providing the services that is required under the contract, and the Australian people decide to exercise their right to take their country back from this foreign government in exile, de facto government in exile, which the Australian people have every single legal and lawful right to do so at any time. If any Australians decide to take back any of the public infrastructure or anything, it says, anything, the military can be used to go and recover that from whether it be a group of individuals, whether it be a single individual at their home or at another place, wherever. It's basically unlimited power for military to come into your home and do whatever they want. The call-out provisions. Proposed sections 33 through to 35 of the legislation outline how and when the Australian Governor-General can send in the troops after state or territory authorities have requested assistance in protecting either Commonwealth interests or states and territories from domestic violence. This can be done when authorised ministers are satisfied that the ADF should be sent out to aid state authorities. There are three authorised ministers: the Prime Minister, the Attorney General and the Defence Minister. Again, just look up our Defence Minister and what she's doing with our privacy. And if you trust her to be making these decisions, well, that's up to you. and the Home Affairs Minister will be added as an alternative minister. What does the Home Affairs Minister even do? And why is he being added to authorise the ADF? Right, troops can be sent in to assist with a civilian incident when domestic violence is occurring or is likely to occur. Alright people, if there is any domestic violence incident, if, you know, like we've seen in the past where the neighbours have called people because there's yelling in their neighbour's house. Right, so the police will also have authority, but now that gives the military authority. So if I'm having a yelling argument with my mate here, and some neighbour decides to call in domestic violence, the military can now be called in. I'm not making this shit up. This is what it is. This is what they're doing. And it's all here in black and white for anyone to read. Blurring the powers. However, authorising ministers can send out the ADF to protect Commonwealth interests in circumstances where states have requested assistance. Proposed Section 38 outlines this can be done when a domestic violence incident is underway or in cases where there is a perceived threat. So nothing even has to be happening, but if someone thinks there is a threat, they can send in the military. Okay. So nothing has to be happening, no domestic violence, nothing, nada. But they can still send in the military at their whim. If this isn't raising alarm bells for people, it probably should be, and it probably means you need to do a little bit more research into the topic. Or other topics. Our Constitution Section 119 was created to support the states, not take over their police powers, Mr. Rowling said. Nor was it about the Commonwealth being able to override the local state authorities, which is a new centralised power in this law. Alright, so we've got this centralised power. Where's it coming from? It's not coming from a de jure legitimate Australian government. It is coming from the United Nations or this US government in exile. So it is central control, not Australian central control, United Nations. And for those of you that still believe the United Nations are your best interest, you probably need to do a little bit more homework into that. Central control, it means dictatorship. Okay, it means one person or one little group of people making the rules for everybody else. States, no power. Federal government, no power. I shouldn't say the federal government, I should say the national government. That's what we've got at the moment, a national government. We need a federal government to be reinstated. The legislation also makes clear that state authorities remain in control during these incidents. However, as we've just read, state authorities don't even have to be there or have anything to do with it. So in saying that, if the state authorities aren't acting on something because it's not in their lawful scope, but some minister decides to send the ADF in, they're not under the state's control. They're under that minister's, whoever that minister is, and whatever they're deciding at that time, that's who the military is under control. Okay, the legislation makes it clear that state authorities remain in control during these incidents. Proposed Section 40 provides that ADF personnel who remain under military command can only carry out tasks requested by state police, although this only holds as far as reasonably practical. So they're saying, yeah, it's all got to be done in accordance with the state's authority as far as they see fit. And any time that they disagree with the state's authority, they're going to just say, well, we don't agree with it. You know, it's not reasonably practical, so we're going to override you. And we're just going to send the military in anyway. The worry is that this law blurs the lines between troops and using military assets and policing. Mr. Rawlings continued. And I've been telling people for a little while now, we are paying taxes, we are paying all this stuff to this foreign entity, it's not a government, to this foreign entity so that they can build these military machines for the proposed use of overseas, for the alleged wars, or the wars that are happening, for whatever the reasons are. But the intention is to bring those military machines back into the sovereign country to control the population of the sovereign country. They don't care about external, they want all that military might back here to control us. Okay, the worry is that the law blurs the lines between troops and using military assets and policing. Mr. Rawlings continued, using the ADF to supplement or boost local police risks escalating incidents and infecting local police forces with the enemy combatant mindset. Yep, the enemy combatant mindset is a real thing, and you've got to understand these people are trained and programmed to act and respond in certain ways. So they go out there with a fear in their mind that is going to be put in there by whoever, that the Australian people are some kind of threat to the national security of Australia. How are they going to sell that to the Australian Defence Force? I've got no idea. But anyway, yeah, they do have, we are trained to have that mindset of enemy. We are trained to shoot, to kill. That is what we are trained to do. In the commandos anyway, in the riflemen, in the infantry. That's what we're trained to do. We shouldn't be using trained people in Australia to kill Australians. We should be using the reserves, if anything, because they're not trained to kill like the regulars. I mean, they are, but they're not as proficient, or the reserves are much more. The Army Reserves is made up of Australian people that are working, like everyday common Australian people that are working. They don't have the time in the Australian Army to be indoctrinated and to be brainwashed like most people in there do, So it's imperative that if in any instance the ADF is called in any Australian domestic incident, it is the reserves. An incremental erosion. A real danger of laws like these are how they might be used by a more extreme government in 5, 10 or 20 years from now, Mr. Rawlings warned. He added that current situations in Turkey and Hungary should serve as cautionary examples. Yeah, and France and America. It's happening all over the world. But you won't see that on the mainstream media because they don't want people knowing what is going on around the world. They want you kept in your little box and being fed what they feed you. That is it. The mouse in the box theory. A real danger of laws like these are how they might be used. Oh, I've already read that. The Defence Call-Out Bill is currently being reviewed by the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Legislation Committee, which is accepting submissions until 31st of July. Any person on that committee who approves this bill is condemning themselves and their soul. The punishment, I don't even know. That's between you and you. The new bill comes on the back of more than 70 pieces of legislation that have been enacted at the federal level since 9/11. And if we don't know that 9/11 was a false flag attack, if you haven't done your research, you really need to start looking into that, because that is as blatantly obvious, and anyone who spends any amount of time in looking into that and actually looking at the facts will know that. That's why millions and billions of people around the world already know that fact, but they don't put that on TV, do they? And this is not fact just because people believe it. This is fact from scientific evidence and studies done on pretty much every aspect of that incident. And I just want to remind you, it was that incident that put in motion all of these laws or legislations that are being used to infringe upon and remove and encroach the rights of every single individual in the Western world. Okay, so the new bill comes on the back of more than 70 pieces of legislation that have been enacted at the federal level since 9/11 in the name of national security and counter-terrorism, which have consistently been whittling away at citizens' civil rights. Before 9/11, Australians had very few legally enforceable rights, Mr. Rawlings concluded. Today, Australians have none, except those that Parliament hasn't yet turned its mind to overturning or abolishing. So I just really felt like I had to do a video on this topic because it is really worrying to hear what they are proposing. That really is a worrying concept to me and to the sovereignty of this country. To every single Australian person, it is an absolute encroachment and infringement upon our human rights, our constitution, and you don't need to understand law to see that this is a problem or to see that this is not right. It's not necessary. You know, we're not at risk. The government kills more people in this country than any terrorist has. The government, or I shouldn't say the government, I should say the de facto government. I joined the military, I joined the army to serve and protect my country and my countrymen and women. And I know that majority of the Defence Force personnel have the same feelings, or at least they did when they joined. And then you get, you know, into the system, and somehow we start to lose that initial drive, and we start to grow a distinct disdain for the people, because they don't operate how we operate. So we grow this frustration because the people are a bit more free and they're not so regimented as the military. So military people get frustrated and then they get disconnected from the Australian people. I'm asking every military person out there, every Australian defence personnel, to really reconnect with why you joined. Why are you a soldier serving your country? What did you join for? Think about that, and do not be afraid to speak out. Do what is right. Be a man. Some people think that being a man is just simply providing for your family, doing whatever you've got to do to provide for your family. That's being a father. Being a man is standing up for what is right in the face of many others that say it's wrong. When you know it's right, being a man is standing up for what is right. I'm not taking away, like, fathers obviously are men as well. But that is, in my definition, what it is to be a man. Well, a small part of it anyway. I was watching another video last night from Donald Trump, and there was this big hullabaloo on Fox News about how good he is and actually how well he's done to get these zero tariffs with this deal with China. And they made a big thing, you know, Trump's doing all this good stuff, and if you actually listen to what he said in that speech, all he is saying is that there's going to be zero tariffs on non-automatic industrial goods, and they're going to remove restrictions on the trade of chemicals and pharmaceuticals. So what he's saying is they're taking away the taxes from the chemical and the pharmaceutical companies. Yep, zero tariffs. So he's making it easier for America and China to trade pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and all this stuff without taxes. So they're going to pump all that stuff into the American people, and they're not going to be receiving any taxes from it. So how are they going to pay the health bills and the medical bills from all these chemicals and things and all the side effects that actually are doing more harm to the American people? You know, we really need to listen to what these people are saying, because it's what they're saying. They're telling you what they're doing in no uncertain terms, but the media will turn that around, and you will have half of America screaming out saying what a hero he is and how good, you know, he's got these zero tariffs with China. But listen to the fine print. Listen to what he says. It's not good. It's not good for the American people. It's good for the corporations that are selling these chemicals and these drugs. It's not good for the American people at all. It's good for the corporations. Rashby, hey buddy. Cam up and face out. I'm doing well, mate. Hope you're doing well. Thank you, Solar. Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, it is really interesting, man. And it really, you know, hits close to home. But I do believe that majority of the Australian military or Australian defence personnel join the military or the defence force in order to protect and serve their country. Majority of people in those organisations are beautiful, honest, hard-working, very hard-working Australian people, and they put up with a lot of shit from their superiors to do that. I just ask is not to forget why you've done it, and not to simply submit to authority when you know it's wrong. Because you people in there are the ones that are going to make the change. You're the only ones that can make the change from that side. So I'm really asking you to think about what's being proposed here and start talking about it. Hey Brendan, hey Brett, hey Jada. Shanti, hello. Ian, hello. Truda, hi. Zoe, nice to see you again. Hey Donna. Toby, rebellion, hence the military and fence around Parliament. Exactly right. You know, they're building a massive fence around the Parliament building. I don't know if they've got military or not. I haven't seen it, but if they have, you know, that's even more worrying. Someone's just commented they can't share. Hopefully you can share it once I've got off the line and uploaded it to my page, then you should be able to share it. Hey Julia, Melody, Plugger, Elfin, Kirsten, Debbie, Shannon, Liv, hey Liv, Marina, Samantha, Lionel, Toby, Isabella, Sonia, hello. Plenty of people out there. Hey Taylor, Joey, Joel, Grant, hello. Meriki, hello sister. Abby, hey Kathy. Please share this video once I post it again. Again, this is the only source of real media that exists in this country, is social media and internet. Your TV is not going to tell you what is important and what is going on. You can see their fear campaigns they're putting out. You can see the media is really worried because they are putting out fear campaigns. They are, you know, which is so ridiculous that unless a person was watching that and absolutely not in any state of consciousness and not thinking for themselves at all, unless someone's doing that, then anyone seeing these things can put the pieces together and see what's going on and see that it is not good for the Australian people. It's not necessary. It's a negative thing. Donna, isn't the military trained to follow orders and not ask questions? Yeah, they are. Exactly right. They're trained and they're drilled and drilled and drilled. This is why it is really important that, as it stands, you know, we have the Australian reserves military. The Army reserves are there for domestic incidences within Australia. And the benefit of having the reserves remain in that role is that the Army Reservists are living everyday common lives. They're not there full time. They're only there once a week or whenever they go away. They're trained, but they're not indoctrinated like a lot of the full time. Once you get in full time and you're there every single day and it becomes part of your life, it's hard not to get caught up in the hype of it, and you get indoctrinated, and you become separate from the Australian people that you swore to protect, So it's really important to keep the reservists in that role, because the reservists are the Australian people. The reservists are out there every day. They're working normal jobs. They're everyday people, and that's what we need. If there's going to be any incidents in Australia, it needs to be dealt with by Australian people that aren't indoctrinated or that can think for themselves and that have a vested interest into it, And we've all got a vested interest in this, because this is our country and this is our families. And you've got this foreign government trying to turn its own people against its own people, trying to use Australians to combat Australians. Can you not see the division? Can we see the divide now? Can we see what's happening? It's not good. It's not in the best interest of the Australian people at all. Hey Daniel. Hey Dee. Hey Katie. So that's really the end of that video. I got a really interesting download last night. At about 1:11, I got out of my bed and started writing. And I'm going to address the leaders of this planet who seem to forget their role and their position in life itself. And I'm going to remind them of that position and what is at stake here. Because if they think that they can get away with something by manipulating and deceiving the collective consciousness, which is the public or nature, and harming that, if they think they can get away with that in the material just because they might sign something different to what they're saying, or they may say something and make it out to be something that is absolutely, completely different to what they're doing, there is nowhere, there is no corner dark enough, there is no place quiet enough for you to whisper and hide to get away from yourself. You will never be able to get away from yourself. Okay? And you will have to face and answer to all the negative things that you create. I don't care if you believe it or not. It's not up to me to make you believe it. I'm just here to give you the message. And I'm going to give that message later tonight. But anyway, if you've just tuned in, please go back to the start and watch this video. It's a very important topic, and I really want to bring a lot of attention to this. So please share this video. Please share, please share, please share. This is the only forum we have of getting this information out there. The media, the mainstream media, will not put people like me on TV because they are afraid and they fear the truth. They are scared. They are not courageous. They are deceptive and weak. Like little children who lie and deceive to get what they want. You are little children in this world. And you will be punished by your Father as little children until you learn your lesson. And I'm going to get into that later tonight anyway. Hey Punchy, hey Gem, hey Heh. Thanks for joining again. Please share, and yeah, I'll be doing another video tonight. Lots of information, lots of things coming to light, just so much information. So you'll probably be seeing a lot more of me as things unfold rapidly in today's society, to do with our laws, our legislation, and our alleged government. So thank you again for watching, and peace.